What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Ham Radio Crash Course. What is up, Welcome to Sunday. The great YouTube Ham Fest rolls on, and I am one of the last videos. And I got a cool one. I am here with DL2MAN Manuel and PE1NNZ Guido, and we're going to talk about the true SDX among many of their other projects that they've worked on. So this should be a lot of fun. A lot of people have been talking about this radio, and it's going to be just super cool to hear it from them directly. So enjoy the memes as we kick things off. All right, everybody. How is the YouTube Hamfest going for you? Guys having a good time? I hope you are enjoying it. Everybody in the chat room, we are paying attention. Guido and Manuel and I are looking at the chat room, so if there's some live questions that come up, go ahead and post them. Just say at Ham Radio Crash Course, and we'll see it, and we'll try and take them live. But I got a whole bunch of questions because obviously, hopefully, you've seen my videos on building up my true SDX and also purchasing one from UpTech, which we'll talk about that as we go along through it. So everybody in the chat, already a lot of people. So thanks for everybody coming on. Really appreciate it. Couple of things to hit before we dive in completely here. Want to remind everybody, hamtactical.com. We still got Give It the Beans coffee if you're interested in that. And that Dayton t-shirt's not going to last long. Once Leia figures out it's still up there, she's going to pull it. But yeah, if you're interested in some merch or anything like that, go check that out. Or support us over on Patreon, because that goes to the YouTube and also supporting the podcast that I do with my wife. All right, so a couple links, they're in the description. DL2MAN has a bunch of videos up on building the true SDX and answering a ton of questions. You can see it all right here. So make sure, as we go along, make sure you're subscribed. If you have further questions, this is one of the best places to go. Also, DL2MAN's website, dl2man.de. Bookmark that, again, if you have questions, particularly if you're building up your own, flashing the firmware, or doing the bootloader if that is so required. Good place to go for that info as well. And there is a forum link. Make sure that you check out that forum, because many questions, myself included, when I was running into some problems, I went to the forum and I got some really timely answers to questions that I had, which was really, really nice. So that's also where some troubleshooting is going on for people that they're having separate problems. It's a wealth of information. So to maximize the amount of time we have here, because I think we're going to blow right through this, let's bring on Manuel and Guido now. How are you gentlemen doing today?
Hi, good evening.
So what's
You're doing great.
Thank you. What's the time difference over there? Obviously, I'm here in the States. It's 1:30 p.m. here Pacific time. How about you guys?
It's here 10:30 right now in the evening. Same for Manuel, I think.
Yes, exactly. We're on the same time zone.
Very good. Yeah, so thank you for being on a little late. I appreciate that, but I really do appreciate you taking the time. So give us a bit of background, because I think a lot of people see the true SDX and they see Manuel's channel and DL2MAN, but Guido, you're a big part of this as well. So I was hoping to kind of get, a little bit of both of your backgrounds with electrical engineering, software engineering, and then your involvement in ham radio. So what's your background individually? What'd you guys get started with electronics and ham radio?
Want to start, Guido?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my background is very unspectacular, to be honest. I got a basic electrical training. I am an electrician, basically. Okay. But at my education, the time of my education, we had a radio workshop, a radio repair workshop, and this is where I learned about electronics, basically. Mm-hmm. I repaired radios for like 3 years.
How did that get you to ham radio or amateur radio?
That actually started earlier, because when I was a student, I got interested in CB radio. That's where it all started for me. My first radio from my grandmother, which is this one.
Nice. He's got his big CB radio there that his grandma gave him. That's awesome. Very cool.
She or my grandparents, let me say, and they supported me with that wish to get on air. And I met some people where I learned that radio amateurs are allowed to do certain things and I wanted to be a part of that. And I made contact to the local German amateur radio club. I think for my first exam, I didn't even visit the course. I just learned the questions, went to a exam, and I had my first license.
Excellent.
And I was a student back then.
Right. Excellent. So how about you, Guido? How did you get started with all this?
Yeah, so I've always been interested in radio since my youth, and I really want to become a ham when I was 12, 13 years old, and I obtained that at that time. I had to travel somewhere to the center here in the Netherlands and to do the exam. I was very nervous, but I got it, and very happily built then my first 2-meter VHF transporter that I used in combination with a CB radio, because I was of course also doing CB radio, and yeah, and that combination that entered me then in the ham radio, and I started working with packet radio and all these things, and then yeah, I got finally this idea about the micro SDX, which actually is also born a long time ago. Yeah, so in my work, I'm not doing anything with radio. I'm working as software architect. Nothing special.
But that's what you do now, is software development as well. Now, that was probably helpful, very much on the project that we're talking about today, right?
Well, as software architect, you never do something about software itself. So
that's true.
I really also want to experiment with the software, and that's why I like to do this thing in my hobby.
Indeed. So there's a chat comment earlier. I want to make sure everybody understands. I think most people, well, hopefully some people have seen the videos that I've made, or DL2MAN's videos. But yes, we're talking largely, we're going to talk about other radios, but we're talking about the true SDX radios that Manuel and Guido have basically designed and made available to others to create. So we're gonna be talking about that a lot as we go through this. So regarding the true SDX, it sounds like it was kind of stepping stones. If you could start kind of talking about how the whole project got kickstarted. What was the original goal for where we are now? I know it didn't start out with the true SDX. It had a couple of maybe lives beforehand. So maybe Manuel, you want to start, and then we'll have Guido.
I think it would be fair to let Guido start, because he was the initiator of that.
Oh, please. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay. Yeah, it all started a long time before the true SDX project really emerged. It was actually when I got the idea to do SSB modulation with just a PLL digitally. That I developed 3 or 4 years ago. Actually, I developed it also before that on a Raspberry Pi. And then I started applying that on the QP Labs QCX. That's this kind of transceiver. And I started modifying this thing and try out the ID. And that worked so well that, yeah, I've further developed that into a receiver as well, and then a digital receiver. So it became a real SSB digital transceiver. And from there, I met actually Manuel, and we continuously developed actually the true SDX based on the original IDs.
Yeah, let me make sure I understand. So you figured out, or you developed a way to do single sideband via software running on the QDX, right?
No.
Is that safe to say how this all came about?
QCX.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, QCX. QCX.
Yeah.
That's right.
So the QCX is just a CW transceiver. It cannot do SSB. But just by modifying the behavior of the PLL, I found a way to FM modulate the signal. And by doing a transformation in software, I could actually reconstruct SSB by means of that FM modulation. And the way how I did that actually is a little bit sketched here, but it's a bit too detailed.
If you want to go to that second camera, you can, and we could show it, or we could show it towards the end. Maybe that might be the better way of doing it. It's actually, so that might be a good. Is there somewhere that people can go to see that block diagram or your code there for this?
Yeah, well, in the end, exactly, I can show you maybe my window. I don't know if I can share that right now. Is that visible?
It will be,
Okay.
yeah, once you start pushing it.
Yeah, it is. I already pushing it, but it probably don't go through. I can show it to you like this then. In the meantime, this is basically the basic schematic.
Okay, stop
I see
sharing
that
then,
my
and then we can see the full screen. I'll pin you.
okay. It's pretty slow.
No problem.
I don't think it will work. Will it?
We'll get you back in there. Yeah, you'll have to stop screen sharing.
I have to stop? Okay.
There you go. Okay, and then let me
Okay,
pin
so
you.
basically this is the whole idea. It's very difficult to see like this. Yeah, this is basically the schematic. I cannot really present it like this
No,
very
that's fine.
well. But,
Yeah.
yeah. It's basically an transceiver based on a very popular PLL, an SI5351, that we are modulating digitally. There's a digital mixer in it, which is responsible for very high quality, very high performance reception. And there's a class E amplifier in it, which is responsible for very efficient RF generation of the transceiver. And with these elements, we are quite successful in creating a transceiver that has unique properties.
So you took this this new design and you put it on the QCX, and I believe you have it working on the QCX Mini as well. Is that about the time that Manuel joined to help out?
No, actually, very, very much earlier.
Ah.
It was the original QCX where I joined the project, the one Guido just showed. And I think I read Guido's critical modifications at that time, and I thought I could probably do that a little bit better. So I got in contact with him, rebuilt it, and I think at that time I started my YouTube channel and showing the world what it can do and what it can't do.
Right. So you cooked up this new design for or it was software at that point, right, for the QCX, or is it a physical modification as well?
It was a physical modification and different software. And I wrote a manual. I think it's still linked on your GitHub, Guido, right?
Yes, it's still visible. Yeah.
I'll make sure the link will put it. Well, I'll put the link in the description for the GitHub later, so we don't have to.
I don't think it's very useful because the original QCX is no longer available, unfortunately. This is when we later got in contact with Hans, and he actually implemented a PCB in his new QCX Mini design, which made the QCX to micro SDX modification easier. That's also something not found very often, that a guy that actually lives off his kits allows a non-commercial party like us and supports us like this. And I really need to shout out to Hans and say thank you.
Yes, we will talk about that too, because your kit deployment is a little bit different than other kit manufacturers, which I find fascinating as another reason why I wanted to talk to you both. So at some point you're like, hey, let's do this a separate design, hardware and software design, or maybe the software existed, but you wanted something that was a little bit form fit for what you wanted to do. So what was the birth of the true SDX? How did that begin?
That was actually very early in the process where we talked and thought, hey, actually, because Guido had this schematic he just showed you, this could be actually way, way simpler than it was in the QCX time, because more than half of the components on the QCX board were not needed. Yeah,
exactly, and it resulted in this schematic basically,
right?
Which is the whole transceiver. So you have here the microprocessor basically, and here you have the RF portion. with the mixer and the Class E. And basically that was also the basis for the uSDX.
Right. And did that then turn into the two boards of the uSDX? You have the logic board and then the RF board. Is it broken up that simply, or is it more involved than that?
Not yet. Well, that was my part, because initially we had nobody, neither Guido nor me, know how to design a PCB.
Oh, wow.
I'm a CAD designer right now, so I do mechanical parts design for a living, but I never designed a PCB in my life before that. And
Really?
I don't think Guido did some, I guess, right? You did?
Yeah, but not very relevant.
Not very relevant. So then we started this community interested in developing this true SDX further. And we met some interesting people like John, VA7JBE, I think it is. And he was initially the guy, I think he published the first true SDX PCB. Never produced one. Then we said, hey, why don't you make a PCB and we tell you what we like? And the problem is we all got lives, and that's the same for him. He didn't make it, and suddenly I started, well, let's try it. Why not? I had that idea to split it into 3 pieces. 3 it was at that time. We had the I/O board, which contained display, all the audio connectors and the manipulation things. Then we had the main board with the main transceiver on there, and the PA board, or the RF section. So we had the perfect, we planned it as the perfect platform to experiment with, because we didn't know where the journey would go. In the beginning, it was just a monoband board, you know, that was with just one band. But we already had in mind that we could do it multiband, because at that time, people said Class E multiband cannot be done, and I felt challenged by that.
Nice.
Yeah, that was actually that was all the time, right? People challenged us because they say it cannot be done. That already started with the fact that when we started doing SSB with the CW transceiver, yeah, that cannot be done.
I mean, that was the beginning of the whole thing then, right? You can't do single sideband on a CW only radio such as this, and you made that happen, and then you just keep going down the road, and all of a sudden now you have a full-fledged designed radio. So speaking of that, I was very interested in the true SDX because of the nature of its release. It's under Creative Commons, and that's something that is I challenge the chat or anyone to tell me of another kind of radio that's out there like this that is in this Creative Commons release, meaning that as long as someone doesn't modify your design, that they can release it for commercial sale. Right? Is that pretty much an easy way of saying it?
Yes.
What came about that got you to that point? You started doing all this work. There sounds like there's lots of people involved, at least in this community you made, and you get to the point where you're like, hey, this is working pretty well. It's pretty good. We should figure out a way to get this produced somehow. How did you get to Creative Commons?
Actually, it was never meant to be produced, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
At least not in the beginning, because we didn't feel we were there quite yet. So at some point, I think it was the time when I did my 8-band RF board. And at this point in time, the schematics and the PCB still had the label non-commercial use only, because we didn't know what we wanted to do without it. We didn't want to commercialize it, but we wanted to have something before doing something with it, you know. And at this point, we published everything so people could build it, but we had no commercialization in mind yet. So at that point, I need to be careful, because if I say the Chinese, that's dangerous. It's not.
Okay.
Some Chinese hams or some Chinese guys.
Yeah, some people. Yeah.
Discovered the schematic and thought, in conjunction with Guido's great software, hey, we could commercialize it. And they did their own designs, which is by default the greatest compliment you can get, because obviously they are finding it interesting enough to sell it.
Right.
The problem is they didn't see what the design was all about, what the intentions were, what our design goals were. And this is all about efficiency here.
Mm-hmm.
This is what we had in mind. This is why we chose Class E. This is why we chose the receiver backend we have. And they didn't, the transceivers that were out there that didn't fit that bill. And they, by the way, they never asked us and never gave credits. I mean, I think they referenced to Guido's GitHub, but they never referenced where they got the schematic from. And by the way, this is also something I want to mention. It has never been done before. Multiband Class E, never been done before.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay. Interesting. I didn't realize that. So that's also fascinating. But it sounds like, okay, so some people got a hold of your design and Guido's software, and they made some changes, probably in the sake of cost, and put out a bunch of radios. And I think what did they use? Oh, I lost my video. Keep going. You can hear me though. What did they use for the title and the name of the radio?
At some points they called it, in the beginning, I think they called it USDR.
Mm-hmm.
So to be close enough to uSDX, but still disguise or tell, no, it's not the same thing. Later in the process, we changed this is actually when we changed the license. We saw what was happening.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one point in time where we thought, hey, let's stop this project. We are not cool with that. That's absolutely not cool. And then we got very harsh feedback from the fans that, no, you can't do that. Stop. No. And at that point we said, okay, let's do the opposite then. Let's go to Creative Commons. But there are conditions. You need to mention the source, and you need to republish under the same license. That was the CC BY, what was it?
Yeah, ND.
No, ND was the true SDX, but we had a different license for the sandwich.
Oh yeah.
So
license.
So you found yourself in a situation where you're getting copied, you weren't getting credit for it, they were taking artistic liberties, if you will, and you said, well, let's go a different way. So that's kind of how Creative Commons started. And that is that about the time where the true SDX started to kind of take shape, and you got to the point where you're developing that and designing that and making it available?
When we thought all the bad designs out there, especially around the it's not. The designs are not bad by default. They made just some bad decisions along the way. Mm-hmm. And because of cost, like you said, or they didn't know what to watch for, especially in the design. I said, we can do that better, or we said, we can do that better. Let's do our own thing here that may be available for commercialization. Let's see what we can do, because initially the project was just something you can build yourself. Then we thought, let's make it easier. Let's publish data that makes it possible for you to have it factory assembled, because these days, when we are living in great times, mm-hmm. You can go for very low amount of money. You can go to a Chinese PCB manufacturer and have it assembled in SMT.
Right.
And that's what we aimed for. Make it easy to be built.
Now, there is a chat, because I know this is, we need to be really clear with people. I'm going to bring up the website again so we make sure that everybody understands this, and we'll bring you guys in here. So this is the DL2MAN website for the true SDX, okay? And at the top, if you go to where to buy, all right, there's a couple of links there. And one of those links is on AliExpress. Rando and Nature says, don't buy the AliExpress version. That's not true. To make it on this list here, guys? What does a manufacturer have to do, and why is it important?
Okay, let me just pick up. Could you, now that you share the link, could you go back to the last page?
Yeah.
To the main page?
Yeah.
And go to the true SDX in the top.
Okay.
There will be a drop down. Yeah. Then you see a group by. This is the first one. One group by. Actually, this was intended to be all a group by situation where some random guy who does all the work. Here you find all the files to produce the PCBs, to have it assembled by JLC PCB, to organize all the parts. And at some point in time, a Chinese manufacturer contacted me and said, hey, how do we get official suppliers? We don't want all that bad stuff. How do we get there? And I said, well, build it, send us a kit, each one of us. Guido got one kit, I got one kit. We will test it, and if it matches the requirements we have, we will give you approval. And that's exactly what they did. They sent us a kit each. They were super friendly. They did a really great job. So you cannot really tell that Chinese rigs or Chinese kits are crap, because there are people out there that really have their attention to detail, I should say. They supplied us with different toroids, Chinese-made toroids, which are really great. I'm really a fan of, because they're top notch.
So then you got the two radios, or you've gotten multiple radios now from some of the manufacturers, and you run through a line of testing. We'll talk about the testing in a second, but that once they get checked off by you, Manuel and Guido, they can be listed on your where to buy site. And yes, there is an AliExpress link for UpTech, which is actually one of the ones I have, and it works fine. I think it works as expected, right? I think that was the point of why you guys go through that effort.
By the way, at this point, hi Sonny, if you're watching, you're making a great job.
Yeah, that's true.
So you now have a situation where you have a couple of manufacturers that are making radios based off of your design that are following the Creative Commons license, and you've produced a couple of updates in software. Where do you see the future of this radio going from a software update standpoint?
Yeah. Of course, it's a never-ending story to add features and make it more and more a full-featured rig. Right. It can already do a lot of things. It's a full-fledged CW transceiver, SSB transceiver, suitable for FT8 work. It has CAT interfacing, but still there are things missing. For instance, we are experimenting now with CAT streaming, sending CAT over, sending the audio over the CAT interface towards the PC. Yes. So that we can do full digital remotely control without the hassle of all kinds of cables.
Yes. Love
that's
that.
one thing.
Is that possible, by the way? So there's been people saying, oh, that's not possible. It is possible. We can do it, right? You can do it?
Yeah, there are possible ways, possible scenarios we are evaluating.
Do I just have to challenge you, Guido? Do I just have to say, it's not possible, you can't do it, and then it's going to be done like that, right? Is that the trick?
No, it can be done. The question is
No, Josh, you need to say it can't be done. Then we are challenged.
That's what can't be done. Can or can't?
That's true.
Yeah.
If you say can't be done, then we're really challenged. And
okay,
then we're
good.
going to really work on it. But yeah. But there are also limitations. The hardware is actually pretty lean. If you look to it, it's just an Atmega through 328.
Yeah.
A lot of people saying this thing is not suitable for the job, but we showed actually you can do a lot with it. But we're also thinking of making the hardware also more suitable for future extension, more features, also features that are now not possible. So that's also a scenario, a road where we're thinking of to expand this rig. So it's also a hardware extension in the end where we're thinking of.
Like
That's
adding
it.
to it, like or replacing one board in favor of another, or this would be a brand new model.
No, it will not be a brand new model. We are continuing based on the same concept. There might be a release 2, right? I don't want to say that actually because it's just yeah.
At some point, we will run into limitations and it will require a hardware redesign. And we are ready to do that. But right now, at this point in time, we don't plan for that. We want to develop it to the end. We know there's design flaws. We know there's problems. I mean, I think the two major complaints we get is the display that's not bright enough. There's a modification for that. And the other thing is the audio. And this is because, as you pointed out, Josh, the speaker was added last minute and we didn't really, it was just thought of as an emergency thing. Mm-hmm. But this can be addressed in a future release. And I'm pretty sure, Guido, there will be a future release, but we don't make any promises about time and what it will feature. Mm-hmm. So at this point, this is it.
Yeah,
but it's also very.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It's also still very experimental. For instance, we're also evaluating the road of building in a very lean FT8, built-in FT8 processing capability.
Wow.
Which sounds crazy.
Yeah, it does sound crazy.
Yeah, exactly. But so sometimes it's just to try out things and see where it leads us.
So going back a second on the audio, remind everybody the size of the radio is absolutely tiny, and the fact you even fit a speaker into it, and that it does work, I think is pretty cool. But much like all radios of that size, you plug in an an external speaker, headphone jack, and it works just fine. That was what I pointed out in the video when I did the review of it. Now, the question I do have is on the transmitted audio side. Is there any work in the future in that? I don't know if you saw my video, but I had a difficult time tuning that, and I think I had to play with the noise gate a bit and some other stuff as far as like the quality of the audio on the receive side. There was some work I had to do. Is there a recommended settings that you guys go for, or how do you go in there and tweak it to get a fine detail or better quality?
First of all, the SSB quality is determined basically by the dynamic range of the Omega. That means there is 46 dB of dynamic range, which means there is enough range for generating an SSB signal that sounds good for a remote station, but listening to your local receiver, it sounds pretty harsh because you hear actually the background noise below that 46 dB.
Okay.
Which is making it difficult to tune basically on your local receiver. Mm-hmm. But recommendations are, if you want to have good quality, you should actually not overdrive the Class E amplifier. That means the TX drive setting should not be too high. It's by default set to 4. If you lower it down, the spurious, the intermodulation behavior become less. It's better, becomes better. Yeah, but it also means less power. So if you turn down the drive, yeah, it sounds better.
The lower you do it, the more linear it is actually, right?
Yeah, exactly. If you go for a setting of 8, it's basically constant envelope. There's no envelope changes in the amplitude anymore, which is a very compressed SSB signal, which is great for QRP usage, but it
punch through a pilot.
Yeah. Oh, there you go. Yeah, that's how you punch through.
Yeah, other people spend a lot of money for like speech compressors and stuff, and uSDX has it built in.
There you go. That's right. There was quite a couple of questions in the chat. One from Don N5SKT says, ask about microphones. I've heard Kenwood or Baofeng style mic can be made to work with the uSDX. Is that? I know the cable is different on that. So what do you guys recommend for mics? Actually, that's a good question.
So now you got me with pants down.
Because sorry.
I'm absolutely not into SSB, but I can tell you, I modified a microphone, cheap Chinese microphone. I think it was for Yaesu. I got it modified. It's really not hard to do. It's just soldering the microphone to the right pin and the speaker to the right pin and the PTT to the right pin, and that's it. You can basically modify any external microphone to work with the uSDX. It's just a matter of doing the right connections.
I will hold up mine. I have this little Chinese mic, and it has the tip ring sleeve connector. And again, yeah, it's just a matter of finding the right one with the correct pins, and it works great. It worked fine for my testing.
So, but this looks like you didn't have the speaker on there, right?
No, actually, I didn't test that. It might
because
actually.
Because you have only one connector and we have a different connector for audio.
Right. Yeah, it's just tip ring sleeve, so I was just using it for microphone mainly. Okay. So yeah, you were asking about N5 SKT was asking about microphones though. So let me go back a step and make sure I get my question in before we run out of time. And we'd like to take some questions in the chat, but we do have a hard out because again, this is the YouTube Ham Fest. So going back a step to you get radios from companies that would like to produce your radio, your design, and they send one to you, Guido and Manuel. What do you guys do when you get a radio in from these manufacturers? Like, how do you put it through its paces to know that one, it meets your design, and two, that it's actually a good functioning radio? What's your process?
Well, basically, it's about we looked at it within specs. I test if the transmit power is there, if the harmonic suppression is sufficient, if the efficiency is there. That's one of the major aspects here, because many people can build a rig that just creates power, but efficiency is a whole different story.
Indeed.
Noise floor, minimum noise floor, sideband suppression is another thing I look into. That's basically it. That's nothing too hard. I mean, I can pull away and you can see my workbench here.
Yeah.
You've probably seen that already in the videos, not in detail. That's my oscilloscope. I got here.
I think you were telling me earlier you have a tiny SA, right? Is that what you're holding up right there?
No, this is a nano VNA actually.
Nano VNA?
But there's my tiny SA, yes. This is what I use to determine harmonic suppression. And I use it also as function generator, which is really practical to test the receiver.
Yeah.
In conjunction with a attenuator that can be switched.
Oh, nice. Yep, indeed. How about what do you do, Guido? The same kind of idea, same kind of thing when you get a new radio?
I try to test as much as I can in software. There are on startup a few things that you can test. It can do auto test, it's self-testing basically. If the bias levels of the ADCs are okay, if the spurious responses are okay, if the SI5351 PLL is locking, all kinds of rudimentary tests are done. And also functional tests can be done to test if the radio is okay or not. The idea is to gradually also move all these tests more and more in the firmware, so that also when people start using the firmware, they get assisted when things are wrong. Things that we can only do now on our own when we approve the rigs can also be done automatically when people using the rig on the first time.
So I only have like a question left, but I want to make sure we get time for you all to mention anything you want to say and questions in the chat. I got one from LabCat, and really it's a comment, I think, on your ingenuity. And LabCat says, oop, that's the wrong one to move, this one. It is amazing what you guys did with a bloody lousy 8-bit ATmega. I wonder what would happen if you would go to an ICE 40 FPGA or an ARM Cortex core. I'm sure you've looked into that. It is very impressive what you accomplished with an App Mega. There's not a lot of power in that chip, but it is very cool what you did. There was a question, let's see, from Linear Phase. He asked, did you use Krauss's RF book to design the Class E?
No, not at all.
Mm.
What I used to design the Class E was basically WA. Oh no, I need to look what it actually was. WA0. Give me a second. ITP, I think it was.
While you look that up, I have a question for Guido, also from Linear Phase. He asked, can you elaborate on pound-defined cat streaming?
Yeah, so cat streaming, what it does is it starts over the traditional cat interface. It starts streaming packets of wave audio data, which has a header in the beginning and a header on the end to make distinction when actually cat commands are coming and when the audio data is coming. And on the PC side, there is then actually a kind of software that filters out this audio data that can be then processed by the software that you're running on your PC. So that's basically what it is doing. So you have a way to receive the audio over serial port, basically.
Oh, okay. So what was it, Manuel? Did you find that?
Okay, there was a spreadsheet provided by WA0ITP using design formulas by NM0S. This is what I used to create the values, and based on that, I worked my way through. And if I'm allowed, I may just pick up two questions from the chat.
Please.
One guy asking, will there be an 8-band version? No, there will be not with this rig, because we have limited space on there. We had an 8-band version, but this had no SWR bridge and efficiency measurement possibility. So we needed that space. So we needed to throw out some bands, sacrifice some bands. But you can build it, and this is another question. More bands are planned, 17, 15, 12, 10. They are actually available. If you go to my site, there are more bands available. Guido made it possible in software that we can use it, but it requires that you change your PCB, your RF PCB.
Yeah, I have a friend, Adam, K6ARK. He modified his to add, I think, 10 meters and 15, I think. I think that's what he did.
You have three possibilities, basically. The low band version, which is what the standard is. This is 80, 60, 40, 30, 20.
Right.
Then you can switch it to classical bands, we call it, because it's without the WARC bands. That's 80, 40, 20, 15, 10.
Yeah.
That's another possible setup. And then there's the high band version. So if you want all the bands, the easiest would be to build another high band version. If you have the low band version, then you have all the bands.
Right.
I try to show it.
The high band version would be 20, 17, 15, 12,
10, yeah. So you can, it's up to you. You've got 5 bands to play with. You guys have made it available. The classic is probably where I'll end up going with mine here.
By the way, I got a lot of bashing that why wouldn't we people allow to just swap single bands, because the band order is important in order to work properly.
Okay. Why were they bashing you over that?
Yeah, the order of this.
Oh, I see.
Because they say, I don't need 60, I don't need 30. Why can't we just exchange them for 10 and 15, for example? That's because the highest band needs to be closest to the antenna.
Okay. Sure. So you're basically, let's see. So you're, I see where you're going with this. But you can, again, the classic omits some bands in favor of others, right? So you could still get, 40, 20, 15, 10 if you wanted to go that route.
Yes. But it has the right order.
Right. So that's interesting. I don't know. Hams will always complain. They'll figure out something to complain about, right? That's what we do. That's our job in life, is to figure out something to be upset about. So what is the change to go to the classic band spread, for instance?
That's a tough one, actually. At least until somebody is creating a new BOM and providing the boards prepared for that band. Otherwise, you will have to remove all the capacitors from a pre-assembled board and assemble them with the capacitors needed. But I assume there will be soon commercial suppliers that will deliver that, what you need, so you can just build up on that.
Right. So at some point, it would be possible, like if I was on the AliExpress site, that in addition to which color I wanted my case to be, I might be able to say classic or high band or low band, right, as an option, and have it be available. Is that something that's possible?
Sorry, say again?
Well, so for instance, like the AliExpress UpTech website, right?
Yes.
Is it possible that they could manufacture a classically banded true SDX and just have that as an option to purchase? Because I would just do that in the future if that was a possibility.
That's exactly what I'm saying. It is possible. We need to confirm the theoretical values I published. I have the practical values for the classical band version. I can give to them. They have that. And once they have a gap, they will probably do that. They said they wanted to experiment with that. They said they wanted to provide that in the future, classical and high band alternative RF boards.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. There was a good question in here. This is from Giuseppe. He asks, is the firmware open to extend, and how can one collaborate on the software side?
Guido?
Yeah, that's a difficult one. The micro SDX is still completely open, and that is extendable and also usable for experimentation. You can, in theory, also run that on the true SDX if you modify it. But that's not done with the current firmware. We currently choose to keep the firmware stable, and we get collaborations, we get inputs via the micro SDX channel, also in this software stream. So if you want to collaborate, the only possibility is to participate in the GitHub micro SDX page, basically. There you can collaborate. That is also how it has been done in practice right now. We will give at some point also feedback to that micro SDX form where we put our learnings from the true SDX into that, so that also the micro SDX community can benefit from it.
Do we want to talk a little bit about why we chose that path?
Absolutely. Yeah, please enlighten us.
I'm asking Guido, actually.
Oh,
I'm fine. Yeah, I'm fine.
Okay. At some point, we decided that we need to take back control over this project because it got out of hands with some Chinese manufacturers. And then there are some free riders right now that are really just enabling some switches Guido has put in the software and publishing that as their own software, which is another thing. I mean, you attract all kinds of people in a project like this. So we thought we wanted to have some control, so we closed it for the true SDX.
Okay.
To have a defined standard that works, and because obviously if you look for the uSDX, there are plenty of versions out there right now, and nobody has control over that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Guido, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I want to say we're still collaborating with parties on extensions. So if people feel like it to work with us together to add additional features, we are open for collaboration, basically, in extending it. But we're not immediately open it up right now to the point where it was in the micro SDX project. Just for that purpose that that Manuel just described, to guarantee that quality aspect, basically. Yeah.
I see a question in the chat. What's the purpose of that serial check when
I was just
downloading
going to ask you
firmware?
that one. Yes.
Yeah, cool. Guido, what's your take on this?
Yeah, what is the purpose of it? Well, everybody wants a serial number on their radio, so here's what it is.
Okay, now the truth. Sorry, Guido. We actually wanted to gain some control over the radio, and this is a way, because we can, if needed, if we saw that some manufacturer is publishing radios and we see there's really bad quality, we can lock them out.
Oh, interesting. That's curious to me. Oh, right, because you've got the firmware and you potentially could figure out what the serial number was depending on maybe how they would. That's curious.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about think through that.
Yeah, we can see basically what happens then if people start copying it, cloning it out of the control of what we publish. We can detect it basically.
There is a question in the chat. You guys probably are too modest to answer this, but who needs donations more? Is it Guido or Manuel? Is there a donation process to support your guys' efforts? Because you did Creative Commons on this. You're not making a cut on these sales. So I would think that in the spirit of ham radio, you know, how does a hams out here help support you guys?
Well, we have donation buttons on the webpage.
There you go.
Completely voluntarily. Not required, but we appreciate every one of them. And of course, both of us, because we are working together. Guido does obviously the software. I do obviously the hardware, and we work together. I give my feedback to Guido, what I think should be done in software, and he gives me great feedback, what he thinks he needs or should be done in hardware. That's the thing.
Are the donate buttons linked on your channel? So DL2MAN.de, is that like one donation for both of you? Is that how that works, or how's that?
Well, on the software download page, you see both of our donate buttons. Yeah.
No, not quite. I think on the software page it's yours, and on the hardware page it's mine. So
True SDX, scroll down. I see the donate button. That would be DL2MAN.
That's mine.
Manuel.
And if you go to the software page,
which is where?
Firmware or bootloader.
Bootloader. Okay.
Yeah, that's his.
Okay, got it. Okay, and it says specifically that goes to Guido. Okay, very good, very good.
So we use all the donations for further future experiments. Basically, we invested in hardware, in software.
As a true ham, you're telling me that you take all the donations and you invested in more radios. That's what you're telling me, right?
Yeah, we do it. We invested in experiments, basically, for the future development.
Yeah. Imagine components. If you try something out, components are expensive. And
yes.
Especially now in the chip crisis, you need to imagine, we have the idea, we want to try this PA FET. So you need to order some. They cost money. You do some experimental PCBs, you need to order some. They cost money. That's how we use the money.
Yeah, let me circle back around on that. Somebody commented earlier on the difficulty in getting some of these Atmega chips. I found that case myself. Is that a problem that you might actually create an earlier revision to try and get around the Atmega, or are we just going to lock ourselves into that for a little while until it becomes so painful it hurts and we have to abandon ship?
That's something that might come. Yeah, exactly.
I had a nightmare.
It's currently a bit painful, and the availability is just difficult, and it will probably not change very soon.
No.
And there are good alternatives out there that we can support, and yeah.
I ended up, I had a kit. I don't know that we want to mention one of the companies that was making kits, not totally approved yet, but I had a problem with my Atmega. It arrived dead, and I just wanted to replace it with the one chip. I just wanted the one chip. I didn't need anything else. I ultimately had to buy some Arduino Nanos, I believe, to get the appropriate chip, because if I tried to buy from Mouser or one of the large electronic companies, it was backdated 70-something weeks for me to do anything to get those chips. It was just not possible.
Yeah. Yes, that's exactly what happens sometimes.
Yes.
It's yeah. There are also Chinese clones sometimes used, which are actually not. They seem to work, but they are not really completely compatible.
Right.
I believe so. Yeah. So we need an alternative, and that alternative is there, and it gives us also plenty of new capabilities, probably. So you shouldn't wait for it, but yeah, it will.
Well, as long as Sunny still can supply, I wouldn't hesitate to order
Yeah.
one. She's obviously in a way better position than we are, because they have way more electronic markets, and
Right.
and she's making sure the quality is right. You
Right.
can rely on that.
Yeah.
I just wanted to show off here and show you my stockpile of Atmegas, but the problem is I can't find it right now. But I bought it off eBay. That's not a big deal. You can also use the PB version.
Okay.
Available.
And what, you just ended up getting a stack of the chips, just the chips without having to be taken off
Yeah,
of the
it's
board
just
or anything?
a stripe, like what do you call them?
Pick and place stripe or whatever,
Exactly.
the machine type. Yeah, very good. Well, we got a couple minutes left. Is there anything you want to say? Any comments that you get all the time that you'd like to use this platform to answer, or anything like that? I'd be happy for you to take the time as needed.
I think we addressed the main issues with the rig, what you gotta expect. Actually, I personally would appreciate if there would be more group buy organizers, because we intended it to be a cheap entry-level rig for $50. It was intended to be built for €50. Obviously, no longer possible with the recent chip crisis.
Sure.
And the increasing prices through that. But that's a really great way also to revive your club activity. Just somebody who feels capable, organize that, do a group buy, and do a group build. That's a great experience. Also picking up some less experienced guys and show them how electronics work. It's a great product to learn.
Yeah.
Well said. Guido, anything you want to mention before we close up here?
Yeah, well, the whole project has been a long trajectory with a lot of people and a lot of collaborations and a lot of ideas of people. And actually, I should thank all of them, and even the predecessors, the people who actually before us were thinking out of the box. For instance, Dan Tailu and Victor Echo, one of the real great guys who had real bright ideas that we still base things on. So yeah, that's all what I want to say. Actually, it has been great fun to work with Manuel together, but also with all the others, basically, in getting this all done. And I look forward for the future as well to keep this getting moving in this direction, and I hope also to inspire people also start thinking in this way, because this is supporting our hobby also in a different manner.
Indeed.
Well, what I wanted to mention, I think we have 1 minute left.
1 minute. We got to wrap it up for Tank Radio, but go ahead. Yeah, go for it.
Okay, so this thing was intended as entry-level radio for people who can't afford it, especially countries where ham radio shops are not very common. And we got feedback that is well appreciated over there, and I hope this will get going. So we have DX that was not possible before.
Excellent. Well said. Both of you, thanks so much for taking the time out. I know it's evening now. It's probably almost 11 o'clock where you're at. So I do seriously appreciate the work that you've done and the effort you've put in. Links are in the description for the websites. Make sure to check that out. Everybody watching, go get yourself a true SDX. They're a lot of fun. Even if it's you build it as a kit, I promise you'll learn a lot. And so thank you both for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you very
All
much.
right. You guys stay on the Zoom for 1 second. I'm going to wrap up the show here. So, all right, everybody. The YouTube Hamfest continues. Frank Tank Radio is going live right now. Just click the link in the description or the super chat to get on the playlist, and it'll just carry you all the way through. I'll see you later tonight on Ham Radio 2.0's channel to wrap this all up. 73. See